Before we go into the podcast, I want to just talk about a business that I've set up with my friend George. It is called the Podcast Introduction Group. So if you want to join and be able to be featured on 24 to 48 podcasts to be able to reach an amazing audience, this is the place you need to go to. Podcast, being a guest on podcasts, is automatically establishing you as an authority and is able to build your personal and professional brand. We handpick of a bank of podcasters that we have to be able to grow your business and brand. We do 100% of everything that needs to be done by my team. You do not need to lift a finger. You are able to expose yourself to new and relevant markets by going on other people's podcasts. You also are able to create brand loyalty. People will love listening to you and coming back to your products or services, and it's able to increase your revenue. So if you want to be able to get involved, you can sign up quickly, registered with an account manager. There's an onboarding call where we target the podcasts that you want to be on, the type that you want, whether it's entrepreneurship, business, health, fitness, whatever it is. We then match you to those podcasts and you can start your journey. We have regular catch-ups with our account managers, and Google ranks you when people search for you. So when people are searching for you, you're able to see your podcasts at the top of the list. So if you are interested in being a podcast guest on multiple podcasts, we are the place to go. If you go to podcastintroduction.com and go and register your details, we will have a quick call with you, match your podcast that you want to be on, and we can then start this process ASAP. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Back onto the podcast then. This podcast will educate and inspire with stories of entrepreneurs' journey, and we also explore their why. You will learn from successes and failures to be the best version of yourself. Today we have Colton and David Corpenney, who are the author of What the F is Next. Hello, Courten. Hello, David. How are you today?
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having us. It's a wonderful day in Colorado. Yes.
Oh, fantastic! I'm actually in Colorado in a month or two. There's a podcast movement which is in Denver, Colorado. So I will be near you in about the middle of August. So
nice. Let me know if you need any recommendations for.
Oh, we'll speak afterwards. Well, thank you very much for joining me. We're going to talk about different aspects of both you, Courten, and as well, David, about experiences, and we're going to talk about your book as well. But the podcast is called Absolute Business Mindset. So firstly, for you, David, what does a business mindset mean to you?
Yeah, first of all, I think that it's important for me to always be engaged in a business that aligns with what I think is of value in the world, that I appreciate as value in the world. You know, one of my really first jobs, you could say, or things that I did as an entrepreneur was I was a real estate salesperson. And I remember giving it a lot of thought to say, okay, so why would real estate sales be important? And I said, well, I think three important things people have to have: food, shelter, and clothing. Yep. And shelter, having a home, is meets one of the criteria. So back then in 1970, being a real estate salesperson was the conduit for people to get their shelter. So I always put that number one on my list. And of course, I have to make enough money to support our lifestyles too. But that's kind of second to the first one.
Yeah, and my experience of renting properties in London is that I often buy houses only, not necessarily apartments or condos and things. But I always insist on families being in my homes. It's something that I grew up in the same area, and the family home was very precious to me. So I want to be able to create that. So I think that's absolutely right. I think it's like a noble idea that you are providing shelter, you're providing support for people. They are paying for it, obviously, but I think that's very important. And sometimes it's forgotten in real estate. People get too obsessed by building blocks, and then they lose the mission behind what they do. But I'm pleased that you've stuck true to that. So thank you. And Courten, over to you. The second question I often ask is, tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
Yeah, I would say definitely growing up in Colorado, having the opportunity and access to the outdoors and having a family that was very geared towards like adventure kinds of activities.
Right.
It was definitely a awesome element of kind of like my dad and I's relationship, going backcountry skiing, snowboarding, fly fishing, hiking, golfing, and just being kind of surrounded by the wilderness and in the homes and the places that, they decided to, live and raise me. So yeah, have a, very big passion for doing things in the outdoors and, adventure in general that is still with me today from that time and upbringing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we're often, I find entrepreneurs as well struggle with sometimes work-life balance. I actually don't believe work-life balance actually exists, but that's another story. But I think a lot of people forget that sort of outdoor activity and being out in the sun. And we've just got a bit of a heat wave in the UK at the moment. And it definitely being outdoors, just there's an element of being alert and being active, which is very positive for that sort of work-life balance. So I totally agree there. What's your experience, Courten, on the real estate business? So David said that he has buy-to-lets, he has houses that he rents out or flats that he rents out. What was your experience growing up with the real estate business being full and present in your life?
Yeah, definitely. That's another key element. I was definitely taught by doing, not necessarily by showing. So it was just such a natural part of our family household, right? Like the voice machine would come on and it'd be somebody looking for an apartment, or it'd be the maintenance person saying that there's a leak or some crazy thing happening in one of their properties. So I just kind of naturally, it was like a part of the flow for our family. And then additionally, they offered me like small odd jobs. I did the mowing and the painting, probably maybe a little bit too crazy of painting. I think I painted like a full like 8-plex building one time on my own at like 13. I'm up on like a ladder 40 feet up trying to like get this spot right by myself. Like, yeah, I got this, no problem. So, that definitely instilled the kind of, even if you're the owner, you're still kind of the gender. It doesn't matter. Like you got to also kind of know your properties in and out. My dad does a really good job about that. And, just like doing the walkthrough, looking through, kind of looking underneath the, looking in the storage unit, looking to see what the vibe is for how the tenants are interacting and stuff like that. So I just kind of learned that by being around. And it just, showed me what a great kind of business and source of passive income and also just like as a great, offering to a community specifically.
So, okay, David, why don't you tell me about your book, which is What the F is Next?
We'll be back after a quick break.
If you're an online business owner and you want to learn what's working right now to generate leads, grow your following, and get paying clients and customers, then be sure to check out the Digital Trailblazer podcast. Each week, we feature online business owners just like you who are launching and scaling their businesses, and we reveal exactly what they're doing to rise above the competition to build a successful, profitable online business. And what's really unique about the Digital Trailblazer podcast is that you're going to learn these strategies directly from the business owners who are putting them into action and getting results. So head over to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, or just head over to digitaltrailblazer.com for links to all of our episodes.
Yeah, the book is unique in the sense that I have read as many of the intentional books that I can find about it. And what's unique about our book is that we don't tell people they need to change anything to be successful or have a fulfilling life. The beauty of it is that people have had successes in their lives, and they've done things that have significantly given them fulfillment. And our process is a 3-step process, of which the first is to help people reflect on and inventory all those moments in their lives where they have been doing what they love and also what they've been doing really well at. So the combination of those two things.
Yep.
And then in there also, of course, is the things that they continually dream about or want to be doing more of.
And what's the third step? So you've got reflection, you've got what they dream about. What's the third step?
So that's actually part of the first step is identifying that. So we've carefully crafted about 20 questions that people can answer to help them sort that out. Okay. And then from that foundation, they move to the next step, which is actually figuring out what are the most important areas of their life that they have interest in making a change to. And we have then a process for them to be able to write up that intention in a way that the intention will be well written, it will be positive, it'll be actionable. And then the third step is actually integrating it into a person's life. And so we have a very simple, straightforward, scientifically based process that helps people actually integrate this into their life. And again, we really push for people just to do this in one area of their life. And we find that if you can do that from our own personal experience and also from the research, that will help give people the confidence if they want to do it in other areas of their life.
So what have you found from feedback? Courten, what have you found from feedback from people who have read the book? What area of life are most people doing it? Is it business? Is it family life? Is it socializing? What's the area that they've told you that's been most impactful?
Yeah, there's definitely examples for all different areas of life, but I think the two that are most prevalent are relationship. So like finding a life partner or optimizing their current relationship. And the other is definitely business and kind of, financial security.
So I'm intrigued. How can someone, so you're saying that you have a reflection point, you think about the change, the intention of change, and then you integrate that into people's lives. How are the same principles, this is for you, Courten, again, how are the same principles for finding a life partner and running a business? How have you managed to interweave that to be able to be generic enough to work across different areas of people's lives?
Yeah, so you start by identifying a big rock, we call it, in your life, the thing that you want to focus on specifically. That's like a key differentiator, I think, for our book, is that we don't say that this process is going to help you find your life purpose. I think that's oftentimes kind of BS in general. If by saying a process will help you find your life's purpose kind of suggests that you have not been living your life's purpose up to this point, and the things that you've been doing have been pointless. So ours is more of a tactical approach about just that one area of your life. So identifying with that is super important up front. So what is your big rock? Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's business. And then when you're answering the questions, we start from an appreciative inquiry lens. So it is appreciative inquiry is a way of looking at how you have things in your life as opposed to not have things in your life. It's asset versus deficit. So instead of, answering them from a why don't I have this, it's what things do I already have that exist that have already worked well for me that I can apply to that specific area of my life.
So there's a lot of self-help books that they've been written for many years. And I went through an experience. So I worked in corporate. A lot of my listeners will know I worked in corporate for 14 years, then left and then was trying to find that fulfillment. And I think that's something that I'm interested to hear. Maybe David, you can speak of, is the idea of fulfillment versus happiness. It's something that I've talked about on the show before, and that happiness is very short-lived. It's almost like a hit of enjoyment, where fulfillment is really what you should be looking for, the purpose, which is what Colton was talking about. How have you been able to build in the book, or how do you sketch it out in the book, that fulfillment is something that we should be looking to get in one's life?
Mark, that is a really great question. And I believe that is a pretty significant part of our process. And the way we lay the book out is that you do want to live a life of fulfillment, but how do you know that? And I think actually it's one of the stumbling blocks that some Colton was referring to as a distraction, even from people taking the time to do this kind of a inquiry into their life. And that is, they don't really know what it is that will bring them fulfillment. And that's why we've crafted these questions to help a person to walk through that in their own life. And as Colton said, we all have that. We've all had those experiences, but many times we just don't take the time to do reflection. I know I was talking to someone. I have two stories I can tell. One has to do with, at the end of the year, people try to create New Year's resolutions. Well, maybe we should actually be doing New Year's reflections. So we need to take the time to look back on our last year and say, what are the things that worked? What did we really love about last year? Instead of trying to think, oh, okay, I probably have to do things differently. And what's that? That's out of nowhere. That's just out of thin air. So I think that's the heart of it, is that people need some process to do that. And we suggest in the book that people find, whether they use our book or any intentional design book, find a partner, find somebody. It doesn't have to be your significant other. It can be your brother, it can be a friend. And that combination helps when you say, maybe get to a place in a question like, what is it that I spend a lot of time on and I'm super concentrating on? What do you notice? And they say, oh gosh, when you're done your workshop, piddling around, building cabinetry, you're in your real happy place when you're doing that. So partnering with other people, using them as a resource for you, I think is really important in helping people to answer the probing questions about what it is that's fulfilling. And my quick story is that recently my wife and I play golf with another couple. And I don't know, do you play golf in the UK, Mark?
Yeah, we play a lot of golf. I personally haven't played for 20 years. And it's actually a pretty major hampering of business, because a lot of business is done on the golf course. So personally, no, but there is a lot of golf played in the UK.
Okay. Well, we play golf pretty regularly.
Right.
And so I was playing golf with this other couple, and this other couple's wife is a kind of a prominent artist in our area. And I just happened to come up with this question. We were walking down the fairway to our balls, and I said, Karen, so on a scale of 1 to 100, 100 meaning that of all your major life intentions, you've just nailed them completely. 1 meaning they haven't gone very well at all. Where would you rate yourself in your overall life intentions in the large areas of your life? She thought for a second and she said, I think 85% of the time. And I went, wow, that's pretty high.
That's pretty good.
And yeah, I thought that was pretty high. And I'll come back so you can be thinking about this, Mark. What would you answer to that question? So anyway, with that, I go to my ball. She went to her ball. And then you go to the next tee box. And I'm stepping up to the tee box. And all of a sudden I hear her running up behind me, just full of excitement. She goes, David, you asked me that question, and I've been thinking about it, since that time. And I am now really energized to know that I have been successful at intending things. And some things I intended were incredible, and they happened almost to the letter. So now I'm going to do intention more in my life. And I think that's at the heart of what you're saying. People taking the time to connect to who they are, what's made their life fulfilling, and the process of how they've done that. So, Mark, how would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 100?
So something I've been prioritizing starting this year, is my health. I'm now just 43 years old, sort of not prioritized it as much as I should maybe the last 5 years. And so this year I felt that, yes, I have to run my businesses. Yes, I have to do certain things. The last couple of years has been family centric for good many years, especially through COVID times. It made me very much focus back to the home. So I would say I'm a solid sort of 75 with a lot to still move forward to. And as I said to you earlier on, I'm quite intentional because I goal set. That's the way that I do it. I have a session around Christmas time, which I reflect on the year and then plan what I want to achieve in the next year. And as I was saying earlier, I'm just at that sort of point. And it's usually like sort of summer holiday time. The kids are finished. Kids are not finished yet, but usually that's my sort of stop and sort of reflect. And how's the first 6 months gone? So the way that I'm intentional is by setting goals, because I think that for me is the best way to also make myself accountable. And I know you said about other people, getting feedback from other people is really important. And I was just thinking while you were talking, that whole sort of 360 on yourself, asking other people, their perception of you, because your perception is one thing where other people see you perhaps differently or see other strengths of yours. So I would say I'm a solid sort of 70-75% at the moment, but I still feel pretty positive about where I'm going in my life and in my intention of what I want to do with my businesses, what I want to do with my family. And now health is becoming a major factor for me, because what's the point in having wealth if you don't have your own health? Has been my discovery over the last couple of years, because it's just absolutely critical.
Well, congratulations on both of those, having goals, being intentional, and focusing on your health. And at this time,
it took me a lot of self-development books and reading and Audible to get to that point. It's probably an exercise. So I've been out of corporate for 2 or 3 years. But 8 or 9, maybe even 10 years ago, I went on a self-development junkie sort of style of consuming books to understand oneself, to understand where we're going, what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to achieve, relationships. I've worked hard on relationships in my life as well. So I would urge anyone that sort of self-development is a major component. And I think your book, from reading, I read some Amazon reviews, and there were some really glowing Amazon reviews of people that have seen impact from your book. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. Courten, I want to talk to you. We've talked about fulfillment. And the one word that I think you used earlier on, which your dad didn't use just now, which I want to explore, is about purpose. So how do people find their purpose in life?
Yeah, I think it definitely varies person to person. So there definitely is no way to, have a one size fits all. Here's how to find your purpose. I think for me and for what I, recommend is that you have intention around things that you want, and then you become good at making those things a reality. That's the best way to feel that you have, control over your own destiny. And that is then a vehicle to then find your purpose, which is often a mix of multiple things, probably a bit of, business mindset, relationship mindset, and holistic, just like, health mindset. If you can get those 3 things together, then in their combination, you will find your purpose.
How do you move, Courten? This is another question for you. How do you move someone from reflection, thinking about the change? How do you get them to action? Because a lot of people struggle with that. They'll goal set, they'll ruminate, they'll think about it, they'll read books. How do you move that next step, which is the critical part, is actually moving them into action? How do you do that?
Yeah, so, we all have ideas and thoughts of things that we might want that just kind of float around in the ether. But the biggest thing is to do a process of some type. So by doing our process or any process, usually it involves, doing some actual physical work. So in our case, it's answering 21 questions and then using our process to then create what we call what's next intention around that. And the process of going from the answers to the questions, applying them to that specific area in your life that you want to make progress on, have a what's next. And then editing it down and making it very cohesive into a very short statement is such a powerful, just cognitive process of structure, that then you have this, somewhat abstract idea or thing in your mind that's now been written down on paper and is very concise. And that will then give your subconscious something to attach to then, not only will you be looking for opportunities and things consciously, but also subconsciously. And then also physically, just being reminded of that intention through, ripping it out and putting it in your mirror, putting it in your wallet, or then setting specific calendar, meetings for yourself to check in around those is the number one way to bring it from, just this kind of abstract thought into a tangible thing. This is what I want to do, and this is the specific area of my life. And then here are some specific tangible elements of how to be reminded of it. And also another key component is the process not only, asks you what you can do, but how others in your community can help support you in that. And just by, being confident and clear about what it is that you want, which is the process, the initial work, and sharing that with somebody else, it externalizes it and then creates like much more of a dynamic relationship of like support, and also kind of, there's just some element of, you've said it, so now you need to make it happen. And that really adds to power so much.
The word that springs to mind is accountability, holding yourself to account,
exactly.
Either by writing it down or telling people. I think that's really key for people if they're looking to make that change in their life, whether it's business or life or relationship.
And there's one funny element. It's my dad's thing that he always does at birthday parties, a birthday wish. So, usually when someone has a birthday, they put the candles out and then everybody's like, make a wish. And the person, if you don't have like, a lot of intentional things, which a lot of us don't, actually does like some really interesting self-reflection in that moment, right? About what it is that I want. If I could make a wish, what would it be? And They do this self-reflection. And then the process that we currently have in our culture is to be like, no, don't tell anybody what it is. And it's so crazy because you have just actually created this awesome, probably intention for yourself. And then you have the people that you're surrounded by to potentially make that happen and hold you accountable or think about ways to support you in that. So always everybody like, but don't tell what it is. And my dad will be like, what do you mean? Like, tell us all, like right now, we want to know exactly what it is. And everybody's like, what? Like, this is all uncomfortable and stuff, but it's just interesting. That's kind of our approach, is that we should keep that stuff in.
And I totally agree. I'd not thought about that, David. That's genius. Because as you say, in that moment, you are thinking about what you really want, and why we just don't tell everyone. What we really want is A, B, or C. So I think that's really interesting. David, over to you. So if someone's reading your book and they say, I want to be a billionaire or a decamillionaire, I want to have lots of money. What's your view? Because you've said that primarily it's business and relationships, which people read the book and are giving feedback on. What's your view if someone starts with, I want to be a billionaire?
Yeah, that would not be the entry point that I would support.
Why is that?
I would ask people to reflect on what we've been talking about, which is really what brings you fulfillment. What has brought you fulfillment? And yes, money is a component to that. You have to have a certain amount of money. And I have a little bit of an example for myself. When I created my intention when I was 23, that I wanted to be financially independent, meaning I could do what I wanted, when I wanted, and whatever work I did, like this work now, I don't have to make money at it. It's the work I love and want to do. So I created that intention, but I also put a number on it. I thought, at the time I didn't have children. And so I came up with a number back in early 70s. I thought I could live on about $3,000 a month. And that would support a lifestyle, a really comfortable, full lifestyle. And so I did have a number in mind, and I have now, that number is generally the same now, except that it has grown through time, of course. It's not $3,000 a month, but it is a lifestyle and allows us to travel. We have a nice home. We don't have a mansion. But we did think in terms of what are the things that we really need as a lifestyle. And I had a friend who was also in the real estate acquiring business at the time. And he's probably one of the largest real estate owner companies in Colorado. And we had lunch a few years ago, and he said, I'm still in the game, and I spend a lot of time because I built this big empire and I have very little time to enjoy all my assets that I have acquired. And I don't have that at all. I have the time to do what I want, when I want. And we do have, the money to do fun things as well. But I would not, if someone starts there, I would have them step back and design the lifestyle that they really want. And for most people, my guess is they don't need, $1 billion or even close to that to have the kind of life they most want to have.
Yeah, it evolves the older you get, because when I started my podcast 5.5 years ago, I wanted 1 million downloads. But it's really interesting. The time goes by, the fulfillment I get from interviewing great guests like you, and having these conversations. And I started my podcast agency with a guest of my podcast 2.5, 3 years ago. And we started a business. We've now become very good friends. Those, you sometimes, especially when you're younger, you sometimes think that's, and actually, to be honest, if I was in quote unquote famous because of my podcast, a Joe Rogan style, I don't think I'd be very happy. I think I would feel quite a weight from it, but I feel very freeing by actually doing this. So I think you're absolutely right. These things do change. And I think the reflection point is probably something you need to keep on doing throughout your life to actually work out when your priorities slightly change. So kids are a prime example. My life changed when I had kids, and the direction I wanted my life to go in changed because I now had lives that needed me and needed to look after. So I think you're absolutely right. And I would urge people to read the book and think about that reflection point of, as you say, finding the lifestyle that works for you is more important than a number of $1 billion or whatever it is. So I totally agree with that. Courten, a bit of a silly question. What was it like writing a book with your dad?
Yeah, we've always had a good relationship and worked on many different kind of projects and gone on adventures together. But there is something different about taking on kind of more of a practical work style project of writing this book and collaborating together. So it's been awesome. It has really brought us closer and added this new dynamic to our relationship. But there's some funny anecdotes of just I work at Google and I'm in the tech space and I'm very much on the leading edge of all the tech. And my dad, does a great job, but he's in his 70s and Google did not exist when he was my age. So just being let's use a Google Doc. And if you can comment on this way, right? So we've gotten to a good workflow, but it's just kind of funny, dynamics of working together like that.
David, you're in your 70s. You look amazing.
Thank you.
I'm seriously impressed. Obviously, the lifestyle that you've lived has been good for you. What would you say, David, has been on the flip side, and we're not going to talk about Google Docs and Google Sheets. I want to hear about the relationship side. What's been the biggest challenge working with your son as an equal partner on a project that's like a business or in essence, a project which you have to deliver?
Well, you said it really well, that we're collaborators on this. And with both my kids, Colton's sister is 7 years older. So we pretty much, my wife and I both, by the time our kids were in their teens, even really earlier even than 18, we started to see them as young adults and that they were responsible for their lives and that we are moving into, moving into a role of being supportive and being peers and to be able to support each other, give each other feedback. And so that's a pretty solid foundation for where Colton and I are now with this project. His sister and I have already worked on projects. I know we weren't going to talk about politics, but we were really concerned about in the 2020 election and both Colton and Chelsea and I collaborated on getting the young person vote out for that election. And so we've done that. And I just find this is something that you have not experienced yet, Mark, but you will. And it's about kids that you never think about. But by having children, me having Colton and Chelsea in my life, they offer me a perspective about life that I would not, as well read as I am about things and such, I just wouldn't know about these things. And, he's already mentioned a few of the technological things, but there's a whole plethora of things that your kids will turn you on to, teach you about, that's, been really important. And, the other aspect of it for me is that I've always been my own project manager for all the businesses that I've run. And Colton has taken on that role, and he kept us on task for the 1.5 years it took us to decide that this book was ready to go. So that's actually a real plus for me that, he took on that role. And even in these podcasts, he takes the lead on most of the podcasts because he has that skill. I'm more of I'm in the background. I do the research and I can, maybe, bring that forward. But so we work together well in that arena. So I don't know. Those are a few of the key points.
So my kids are 7 and 9, and so they're both 2 girls, and they're both very young, and sort of at that sort of still need point of view. But
yep,
I think you're right. I think the older they get, they bring a perspective that you might not be privy to, you might not be available to in any other way. So looking forward to that. Absolutely looking forward to that in my older years, to have that relationship with my daughters as well. Courten, what's the plan for the next 2 to 5 years? Is there another book?
So for me, after doing the process the last time, it was that I wanted to decide on where I'm going to live for like the next 10 years primarily. So I have invested in real estate. I've got now 5 doors in Denver, and I am, building community doing that. And I have a plan to be present in Denver for half of the time, and then spend the other half of the time traveling to the other places that like I want to explore, or to do the things that I love to do, like surfing, that is not available here in Denver. So that's like my personal thing. For, when it comes to the book, it's, there's nothing like teaching to make you properly learn. So through having conversations like this and helping others with the process itself, and, having the book out there has just been such an awesome opportunity to just like better understand this work and to, have greater conversations. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We are potentially going to, make another edition or build out kind of like the supportive element of coaching. But for now, it's all about the book and just having conversations like this, and, trying to optimize the best work style, I call it, instead of work-life balance that I possibly can, to be able to, be fulfilled and also be successful.
Amazing. And for you, David, what's the next step? Is there another project with one of your kids? Is there another project maybe you might run yourself? What's your view on the next 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's really a continuation of where I am right now. And I've been fortunate to be able to use intention to get to where I am, and allow me to pretty much at any given time, if I decide this is the thing I want to be doing, I have the mental capacity or the resources to do that. So right now, I do spend a lot of time with my outdoor activities. They really condition my ability to sit here with you in my office. Having, yesterday been on the river fly fishing, and the day before that up on Pikes Peak skiing, and the day before that playing golf with my friend. And all of those things are pretty important to me than doing this passion, which is with Colton, talking about intention and trying to encourage people to use something they've been using their whole life, whether they either consciously or unconsciously, or just have forgotten about it. And I go back to a question you asked earlier. I'd love, because you've said you've obviously read a lot of self-help stuff, and you yourself are applying intention in your life. What is the secret sauce to get people to make that, okay, I'm going to buy this book, or I'm going to buy some other book, or I'm going to, do something to design an intentional life?
It's a really good question. I think it's sort of multi-layered. I think the first thing is to have reflection points in your life. I agree with you 100% on that point. I would probably suggest a couple of books. First of all, E-Myth by Paul Gerber, I think his name is. Michael Gerber. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a must for anyone who wants to build assets. There's a book called Traction by Gino Willock, which is phenomenal. There's also a book called Make Me Rich or something, and it's not, but basically it's a story. I can't remember the author, but it's about prioritizing the things that are in your life that you really value, and being frugal in other areas that are not important to you. And that was a bit of a game changer for me as well, because like the whole point he made was, if you get a latte every day, if you really enjoy that, you should spend your money on that, and not spend it on, I don't know, clothes, jewelry, whatever it is, the things that aren't important to you. But I think that, so I would say having a reflection point, having a bedrock of certain books and stories that I think are really important. But I think that missing component, which probably 95% of people don't do and 5% people do, is actually implementing it as action in your lives. And I think that's the biggest problem that people have. Sometimes you get to analysis paralysis stage where you've just got so much information. Google is there and you can Google anything you want in your life. You've got ChatGPT, which you can just research whatever you want in the world. All these things are helping us. But I think a lot of people are now in the stage where there now is the information out there, but people have to get the right information and be able to deliver on what they need to do. So for me, that the delivery side, the action side is probably the biggest point that I would share with people, because I think there is plenty of information out there, but you just need to be able to do what they suggest you to do. And what you sometimes find is people might read up about real estate and they go, oh, I'll do real estate for 6 months. So it didn't work out. I'm going to move on to e-commerce, and they do e-commerce for 6 months. And then they might move on to, I don't know, something else. And you do have to spend time in an area to really deeply understand it. So it is really important to spend time in your area, as well as being able to make sure that you follow through with what you're intending to do. The intention's important, but actually the action side is probably more critical for most people. Look, guys, thank you so much for your time. I know it's been a bit of a struggle, but I really do appreciate you guys. It's been absolutely fascinating speaking to you. Good luck with the book. All massive kudos. So for everyone, the book is called What the F is Next. I would definitely recommend you guys reaching out to it. Is there a call to action? Is there a website? Is it just go buy the book off Amazon? What's your call to action?
Yeah, the easiest place to find it is thefisnext.com, but it's available on Amazon, and that's the best place to find it, available in most countries in the world.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate your time, and good luck in the future.
Likewise.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers.